Hello and welcome to In Search of the Crystal Skull, an epic adventure into the world of mediocrity. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
And you might be surprised to see this come back. And the reason it is because Masters of the Universe 2026 is going to be the subject of this. And so we're going to be talking about this today.
Yep.
And right now it is slap bang in the middle, according to our current rules, in between 60 to 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means it's not necessarily good, but not necessarily bad either. So we're going to talk about the ins and outs of this. So just to begin, before we continue, is that now, In Search of the Crystal Skull, we've been not really thinking of bringing back until only recently after Masters of the Universe 2026 came out. And so we noticed that some of the movies that we do review that go between 60 and 70% of Rotten Tomatoes, they've changed sort of the rules now in regards to how the movies get reviewed, and some of them have fallen out of scope and some of them have fallen into scope. So what we've decided to do is that we are going to ignore Rotten Tomatoes entirely, which I know was like the premise of the movie that this is based on and the website that sort of kind of like inspired Crystal Skull. But what we're going to decide to do is that any movie that we feel is like not necessarily good but not necessarily bad either, regardless of whether it is on the tomatometer scale or regardless of what people think of it, we're just going to do an episode of it. And so it basically widens the scope of movies that we can cover for it. So
absolutely,
that's what we're going to do for the foreseeable future. And so this is effectively going to be pending that not any more bad or any good reviews come in. This will basically be like the last, I guess you say, old version of In Search of the Crystal Skull that we're going to do, and then after that we're going to go in with a brand new podcast if we decide to do one in the future.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, if there are any movies that you think is kind of like sort of middle of the road, where it does have a lot of good points but then it's weighed down by a lot of bad points, or movies that are just kind of like sort of in the middle in which they do have good ideas but they're poorly executed, or the ideas were not necessarily that great but they kind of have an enjoyability that maybe kind of like leans it maybe towards something good, then please let us know in the comments below and let us know on any films you want us to cover. That way we can talk about it in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So let's get into our main event, which is Masters of the Universe 2026, the movie that I never thought would ever get made, to be honest with you, after the disaster of what happened in 1987 and the disaster. By the way, there is a podcast that we did of the month where we covered, movies that weren't so great, I guess you could say. We did Masters of the Universe, and then we did We're Back, a Dinosaur Story after that.
Yeah, we did.
And so we decided to do Masters of the Universe 1987 after we saw the trailer come out, because we were like, oh wow, let's bring this up again, I guess. And so that did rather well. And so the great thing about this is, I guess to say off the starting point, is that this is not in any way tied to the 1987 version of Masters of the Universe, except for one thing. Dolph Lundgren makes an appearance.
Yes, he does. By the way, spoilers.
Oh yeah, I guess we can say spoilers, isn't it?
Okay, so yeah, major spoilers for those who haven't seen the movie. If you have the chance to, then please go watch it while it's still in theaters, and then come back and then listen to our discussion of it. But yeah, that is one of the very few times in which Masters of the Universe 1987 plays into Masters of the Universe 2026, is that we have the old He-Man, who is portrayed by Dolph Lundgren, interacting with the new He-Man, who is portrayed by Nicholas Galitzine. And so, yeah, it was actually really nice to see them just have like a brief moment together in the gym.
Yeah, and so that's the only real tie to the 1987 version. After that, the whole feel of the movie is just, not that, I guess we can say.
I mean, sure. I mean, there are some like one or two little things that they might have carried over from the 87 version
like
into
what?
This. We'll get to it when we talk about the story, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, in terms of like any cast members, like Frank Langella, obviously he's not in it. Courtney Cox is not in this movie, and any of the other actors who are in it, other than Dolph Lundgren, nobody else from the old Masters of the Universe appears.
Yeah, so the important thing to state here is that this is not a remake of the 1987 version of the movie.
No, it's
so
not.
Obviously that's but that did kind of irk us a little bit when we saw Dolph Lundgren in the gym. It's kind of like, oh no, we're not going. Also, in fact, he's our protagonist is asking him about advice for this. It's like, Yeah, there's
Don't
that.
drive pink Cadillacs.
Don't drive in Cadillacs. That was one of the jokes I made whilst we were watching the film.
Yes.
So, the tone of this movie effectively is that it's blending once again heroic fantasy, and it basically is like dragons and like all fantasy creatures and everything like that. And that's the world that we're introduced to through Adam, who is our protagonist in all of this, and he explains this is on his first date, apparently, to this woman who thinks he's crazy and walks away like pretty much anyone else would.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense considering of what happens to Adam, where, Adam is trying to impress this young girl on a date and telling his whole backstory about when he was a kid. He was in the planet Eternia, where there was dragons, there was creatures, there was enchanted forests, and there was the castle itself, Castle Grayskull, where it held the powers of Eternia. And so then we cut back into when he's a kid and he's being trained by Man of Arms, and he's trying to learn how to become tough, but he's actually like this weak and very timid child who doesn't really want to be a fighter. He just wants to be a prince, which interesting way of how they were able to change how he appeared in the TV show, where, he was a bit of a coward and he didn't really like to be a fighter or anything like that. But in this case, in the TV show, that was a facade so that nobody would know that he's He-Man. In this, he's actually a legit coward.
Yeah. So, in regards to, our Adam that we get in this, he's obviously not Dolph Lundgren by any stretch of the imagination. And he's also, the one thing that's also kind of disappointing is that he's not even like the Adam from the cartoon show, pretty much. The way I vision in his eyes is that, unfortunately, he's just kind of like, he's come from this, world of fantasy, and he's kind of just turned into, the everyman, if everything. He's struggling with a 9-to-5 job, and his heart's not really in it, and he's just, wanting to, he's basically still in this environment where, he's grasping for the weekend, and, he's frustrated with this whole situation. If anything, one thing I would say it kind of reminds me of is that when you see that superheroes have been banned from The Incredibles, and then you get to see Bob Parr, he's in this horrendous, very stale job, and he feels like he's got nothing to look forward to, and he just feels like, he feels hopeless and not be able to help anybody. And I guess you could say that, I feel like The Incredibles did this situation better than they did with Masters of the Universe, because with Masters of the Universe, effectively what you've just got Adam, who is just very awkward, and the one thing I was hoping that they probably would like to do just as a change is that they would make him into John Connor, he doesn't really realize that he's come from this other world. He just feels like he has this sense of adventure, and he wants to get into trouble, dare I say, maybe in Treasure Planet, when we have Jim Hawkins, who just constantly wants to go out and have an adventure, and where he gets into a lot of trouble because of it. I thought that was going to be our Adam in all of this, but nah, he's just kind of he has a roommate and has this job that he doesn't really like, and he's is earning for more, but obviously he's just kind of stuck in saying, there was this sword one day, and there's all this stuff that he's got drawn up on his room and everything. And the way I feel about it is that I feel like they're just basically doing awkward Marvel, Mug Marvel or Diet Marvel, I guess you could say, protagonist, kind of the same way that we got with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And,
it definitely feels like they were trying to emulate what they were able to do with Star-Lord, Peter Quill, into putting him into Adam, in which he's taken away from his comfort zone and stripped away of everything that he knew and thrust into a completely different world where he's surrounded by different people. And with Peter Quill, he still has the memories of his upbringing. He still listens to music from the 1980s on his cassette tape, and he's able to be really rambunctious because, he was raised essentially by...
I prefer Peter Quill over Adam in this, don't you?
Peter Quill was interesting. Peter Quill was, he was rebellious, and he was a troublemaker, but at the same time, he had this bit of charm and charisma that you wanted to go along with him. He wasn't
trapped in an office, doing, a boring 9-to-5 job. I felt like he was kind of Like, you can. It was nice to see that, where Adam was sort of kind of rebelling against his environment, but then it kind of made him like a bit like, I don't know how to feel about it. Is he being a bit irresponsible? Like, it would have been kind of cool if it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm just going to play about with this for now. I'm going to be, we're still good at what also, the scene where he gets fired, from his job, like, that was kind of awkward in itself, because it was like, his boss was kind of like, oh, well, you do really well, and like, you get on with everybody, but then all of a sudden she's kind of like, oh, well, there's one guy who kind of thinks you're a bit awkward, talk about swords and all that kind of stuff, and actually, in actual fact, you're not doing very good at your job at all. It's like, pick a lane. Like, is he good at what he does, or is he not?
No, I mean, she's saying that he's good at what he does, but he's being distracted because he's trying to find the sword, and he basically spends all of his time at work just looking for the sword, as opposed to like doing his job and helping out the customer. So that's what she was talking about.
Yeah, but I think you would like, but I mean, I if you go through the dialogue again, I guarantee you get mixed messages from like what she's actually saying.
Yeah,
and I felt like it would have been better if it was kind of like Adam is already showing sort of like signs of leadership, and like where he wants to like be something, and so he is like having to like, he doesn't like what he's doing, but at least he's gonna like be there for people and everything like that. So it'd be kind of more like the boss realizes that he's got potential and everything like that, but yeah, he is distracted, and
well, I mean, I can understand
he doesn't think he's living up to like the full thing that he could potentially be. Like, you can't make it like, oh hey, you could be like in top management, but instead you're still like holding yourself back, like we're doing these mediocre things, it's but not realizing that obviously he's still spending the majority of his time searching for where his sword has gone.
Well, I mean,
like
it makes a lot of sense.
Give hints of like the fact that he's going to be like this great adventurous hero eventually.
Well, here's the thing. I think it makes a lot of sense of what they were trying to do, because he starts off as a coward in the beginning of the movie, where his father thinks that he's a disappointment because he's supposed to be the one to rule Eternia one day, and yet at the same time he doesn't do very well with his training with Man of Arms, and he gets pushed around by everybody. Everybody thinks he's just a weakling.
But we've been down this road before with some of our protagonists. I mean, like in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and there's we've been down that road with various other heroes as well, who then all of a sudden become like masters things. Like this is something that isn't new to us really.
That's true, but
I would have liked something a bit more refreshing.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Whereas like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and a lot of the other Spider-Man, they were like teenagers. They were like maybe 16 years old, where Adam starts off as 10. And yeah, Skeletor comes in and he basically just takes over Eternia and he rules it, very similar to the 1987 version, in which we see throughout the beginning of the movie that He-Man, Man of Arms, and Teela are the only warriors left because Skeletor has taken over Eternia.
And this is where I would say they missed an open net, like to make Skeletor. This is the thing about this. Should we get into Skeletor? Because
right,
I really want to get this off my chest. Jared Leto's Skeletor, I think, is half a letdown and also a missed opportunity at the same time.
Okay.
Because they had, Jared Leto basically just plays this the same way that he played the Joker, and he plays various other other roles that we're accustomed to Jared Leto doing. Mm-hmm. And regardless of the controversy that's outside of his career, I mean, the one thing I'd say about his portrayal of Skeletor is that it just I feel like it was kind of like it was locked up in a plastic container and wasn't allowed to kind of come out to its full potential. And so you've got Skeletor, and you can it feels like more like it's a cross between Dr. Evil from Austin Powers and Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. Like he likes to do cruel things. He likes to call people like blockheads and fools and idiots and things like that. And he realizes that he's got morons around him, like as his minions and everything like that. Like they have no guidance whatsoever. I mean, that maybe is a bit of good. That was good in itself. Like the people he has doing his bidding are so weak-minded and so incompetent, and they don't know any better for themselves. And Skeletor has to guide them around and tell them what they need to do.
Yeah.
It's funny because, I mean, the one reason I say I compare it to Dr. Evil is because, he does, on 2 occasions, he does, his whole, laughing, his monologue and then laughing and everything like that. But then it all kind of, stops, like in Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. And it's like, okay, well, what happens next? And it's like, Skeletor kind of looks at everybody and says, well, go on, do what I said to you to do.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it looks like they want to try and do a bit more. They want to add more to Skeletor, but then they strip him down, after trying to to add more to him at the very end of the movie. Whereas, like, at the very end, when, obviously I know we're going a bit forward here, like, what's Skeletor's motivation to do all the things that he's doing? He wants to own everything and become this evil god because villain.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, again, I know I bring this up time and time again, but he has the same motivations as the mayor from Action League now. Like, it's just like...
he does it because he's evil.
In other renditions of Skeletor, it's either been like, he's either the king's brother or like he used to be like, part of it, part of Eternia in some strange way, and, he was wronged and then he's out for revenge or something like that. Like, there's always been some sort of like interesting motivation to Skeletor, except for the for the cartoon, but he's a Saturday morning cartoon villain. That's what he does.
Yeah, in the comics and in the newer incarnations of Masters of the Universe, whether it be with the 2002 Cartoon Network series or even the new Netflix series, especially the one by Kevin Smith, they've always done Skeletor different, where they were able to give him a backstory, they were able to give him motivation, they were able to up the ante of who he really was. And I guess maybe they were trying to do a callback to the 82, 83, 84 cartoon, where he's just basically like Saturday morning cartoon fare.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, maybe this does sell, sorry, let me get my words out. Maybe this does suit Skeletor down to a T. Maybe like, too much bone and not enough meat. So maybe this is what Skeletor should be. But I just thought, I was really rooting for Jared Leto to like, wow me as Skeletor, like, do something that would be amazing for like Skeletor to do, like what we know. Like, he doesn't even do some of the things we see in the memes, or like like exactly, he doesn't say until we meet again, or like he doesn't wave his hands in the air or anything like that, like
or even like puts his head back and laughs.
Yeah, like, I would have loved a bit where like, he's saying to everybody like, hey, this is a pretty simple evil scheme, like, why does everybody not do it? And it's like, they always give him like some really like ridiculous answers, and he just bangs his head on the desk and just, like, I'm surrounded by fools. Then, even the robots are smarter than you. Like, some of the lines that Skeletor had in the cartoon show were gold.
Yeah,
and, like, they're even repeated in various YouTube videos. Like, like I could write a book about what you don't know. Like, it's there's some great lines that they had to work with. They even referenced the 1980s cartoon show multiple times, whether it's in the trailers and even in the in the actual movie itself, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like they didn't capitalize on any of it. Like, why not? It's just, I thought, with Skeletor, I still feel like, the best Skeletor was the cartoon show Skeletor. Like,
there's a reason why you see all the merchandise.
Exactly, even in the merchandise, Skeletor, the 1980s Skeletor is, still gold to this day, and still moves, and still shifts merchandise.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately now, here we are in 2026, and 40 years later, we still haven't yet had anybody to move him.
I've heard some good reviews on Mark.
Over 40 years, yes, actually, I should say, because He-Man vs. Masters of the Universe is older than me.
That's true. Yeah, I have heard some good reviews on Mark Hamill's portrayal of Skeletor in Masters of the Universe Revolution, the Netflix series.
Well, I've not seen that, so
I haven't seen it either. So
Did they actually reference any of the newer He-Man stuff in this movie? I don't think they did.
No, they have not. As far as I was able to look through right before we did this podcast, no, there's not a lot of references to like the more newer stuff from He-Man. Nothing from the comics and nothing from the newer animated series on Netflix, as far as I know.
Yeah, my next disappointment, unfortunately, is Idris Elba's portrayal as Man-in-Arms. And now here's the thing about this. In regards to his portrayal of Duncan, I'm not going to blame Idris Elba for this.
Okay.
Absolutely not. But I think it's the way that his character has been portrayed, and the way the character is written. He feels like Demo Man from Team Fortress 2. That's how he feels like. He's like, give me a bottle of Scrumpy and I'll show you what I can do.
Okay.
Like, it's just his, I said he's not got the Scottish accent, and but that's what he feels like. He just feels like, he doesn't feel like Man of Arms.
No, he doesn't really feel like Man of Arms. Sure, in the beginning of the movie where he's training everybody, he has Teela along his side, basically being like the prodigy as always, and, he's the one who does all the gadgets, and he's the one who has all the weapons, and then he's fighting off against Trapjaw, Trapjaw, and he gets defeated by Trapjaw. And then later on towards the film where, Adam finally comes back to Eternia for the first time in 15 years, we see him in a corner at the prison cell, basically just being depressed about being defeated by Trapjaw 15 years ago, being a complete drunk and just like being a shadow of his former self.
Yeah, like it's just this. I just feel like they completely rewrote Man of Arms' character.
I mean, the reason why is because, you have the fact that they wanted to do a redemption arc for Man of Arms, where he slowly starts picking himself up, and
it's
then he's
unnecessary. Like if anything, like when Adam disappeared, like you would have thought that oh hey, it's gonna be Man of Arms who's gonna pick up and lead the resistance, and it was gonna be him, and the way that they made him out, like I get that they tried to make Eternia like very gritty and very battle ridden.
Yeah, very
like
similar
that.
to the '87 version.
Yeah, which I get that, but this is the thing. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, are we going again? Are we going for the '80s cartoon? Are we doing something new entirely and putting some Marvel paint on it? Are we doing another variation of He-Man? Like, I don't think there was a sit down. I think to decide if this is going to be a reminiscence of we're bringing in people who reminisce about the old He-Man cartoon, or whether they were going to do something fresh entirely. And because you just get this is the thing, you just get this cosmopolitan of different things being kind of like thrown in, like new ideas and old ideas and reimaginings and reboots and things like that. Like it's so convoluted, and it's become quite messy to kind of it's funny because I walked away from the theater kind of saying to Patricia I can't really make out what I just saw.
Yeah, it was like a
we had to talk it out, and also there was a guy who who was coming across asking what I think of the movie. I hadn't half put my thoughts together back yet. All I could just say is Jared Leto let me down as Skeletor.
Yeah. Once we were leaving the theater, there was a man coming in to the theater with his son and saying, "Oh, what did you think of the movie?" Because he was going to see He-Man too, and he noticed our T-shirts, and then Aaron explained about what his thoughts were.
Yeah, again, that's the reason why we're doing a Crystal Skull territory, because there are some good things about this movie, and there's some bad things about this movie as well. I mean, so we're trying to get all the bad stuff out of the way, because I really do want to concentrate on some of the good stuff.
Okay.
As well. The music is badass.
Yeah, the music is fantastic. We need to give a shout out to two particular people. We have Daniel Pemberton, who did the score, and he did the score for the Spider-Verse movies. He did recently he did the score for Project Hail Mary, which also has gotten a lot of critical acclaim as well. And of course, we have to give the major shout out for the guitar riff of the He-Man theme to Brian May.
Yeah, Brian May. I mean, they had to bring in a 1980s guitarist for this. I think they did this on purpose because they knew that they had to get that feeling from that time. And what was it? It was basically a guy thrashing on a guitar, and that's what they did with this movie. And where they tried to make this as epic and also kind of campy at the same time as well, which I think this is the thing about this. They captured it so well. I thought, the whole aesthetic of Masters of the Universe, I thought they did a really good job with that, with the visuals, with the music, with the way that they also designed the characters and everything like that. I like Teela's designs. I like, Man of Arms' design is also good as well. And, where they did such a good job designing the characters, and they tried to make it I know these characters from a cartoon show, and it'd be kind of unrealistic to kind of do certain things. So what could we do to bring them into the real world? And I think with the designers, I think they did a very good job in doing that.
They did.
And also on top of that, they made him you got a guy who Mechaneck who swings his head around and everything like that. How are you going to get to that done? And they did that very well.
Yeah, they did that very well. Yeah, I mean, they were able to capture a lot of the designs of some of the classic He-Man characters, a lot of which was not even featured in the '87 version, and they were able to bring a lot of them into this version, and they look really spot on. I mean, you have Teela, Man of Arms, Mechaneck, you have Ram. Sandman, you have Fisto. I'm really disappointed what they did with Moss Man.
Yeah, I was very sad about Moss Man, and they killed him off just for cheaply, just for like to get a thing out of the audience. And I just kind of felt that was unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing.
Skeletor's already established himself as an evil bad guy. I mean, like, you don't need to make him go the extra mile. Like, dude, come on.
Here's the thing. I know that Mossman only appeared in a handful of episodes of He-Man, but his message about like him looking completely different and him being ostracized for doing something that he would do, like control the plants and being able to get things that he wasn't able to no normal human being is able to do. And yeah, he was able to become helpful at points.
I think when he he was like when he was killed, I thought like, and he was just like this pile of moss on the floor. I thought like, oh yeah, this is what he does. Like he describes himself as moss, and then like after that, like he comes back and he's like, oh hey, I'm back.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to do that with him, but they didn't.
They immediately killed him off.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Like that was nearly a turn off for me. Like so, like okay, well, please give me something else in the rest of the movie, which where they did. It's funny because I think they probably should have done more with Adam/He-Man in regards to he's finally become this character, but he doesn't really know all that well how to fight, and he doesn't really know all that well how to you really manage his powers all that well. It would have been cool if we added some scenes in where Teela was because in the cartoon show Teela taught him how to fight some things, and Man of Arms also did that as well. It would have been cool if we had some scenes hey, hang on a second, we get your families in trouble and like that, but you gotta learn how to fight, kid.
Yeah.
And so the Man of Arms and Teela they teach him we're doing like a crash course of how to deal with this and deal with that. And we had a chance of a montage, a very fun montage as well, which they could have done some some epic music. But I guess they decided, no, we need to go over to Snake Mountain and get captured because so much for working together. That's another confusing thing about this as well, is that Teela and Man of Arms go with He-Man to Snake Mountain because they want to be by his side while he fights Skeletor, but they get thrown in a dungeon anyway, and then where He-Man just goes up to Skeletor, and then they have the epic battle at the top of Snake Mountain, which I'm not going to discount, which is a pretty epic one, but they kill off King Randor. That scene.
That is a shocking thing that I did not expect to see, where Adam inadvertently kills King Randor when he was being controlled by Skeletor. Evelyn captured him using her magic abilities, and so then you have Adam who is trying to break away from Evelyn's magic. Then Skeletor tries to force him to kill King Randor. He shoots the wall crumbles down, and King Randor gets crushed.
And that's kind of problematic in a way because that's a particular thing happened in a particular episode of He-Man.
Yes, it
and
did.
He ended up giving up his power, but he didn't do that in this instance.
No, he didn't. Yeah, whereas
I thought that's where we were going to go. I thought when that happened, it's kind of like, Adam's not going to be able to continue as He-Man. He's going to give up his powers. And he says to the source, I'm not this guy you think I am.
Yeah.
I thought that's where we were going to go with it.
That would have been a great callback to the episode where, for those who don't know, we discussed about this in the previous discussion of Casual Chats where we talked about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. But there was an episode in which when He-Man was at a village and Skeletor was taking it over, but in reality, it was just a ruse because he had disguised one of his henchmen of the week as one of the villagers, and it made it look like he had was being bombarded by all of Skeletor's abilities and his magic and all that kind of stuff. Then He-Man comes by, he tries to defeat Skeletor, and then a building comes by and it actually crushes the henchman disguised as the villager, and it looked like he was dead. And so He-Man was so distraught with it, thinking that he killed somebody, and he decided to give up being He-Man forever. And it wasn't until Orko came by and said, no, that was a henchman who was disguised as a villager. You didn't kill anybody. You're fine. And then He-Man comes back.
Speaking of Orko, if you're wondering where he is in this movie, he's right at the end doing the message of the day.
Yeah, that's the only time in which Orko appears in the movie, where he's calling back to the cartoon where they would always give a message about...
And please don't tell me that, 40 years later, they still didn't have the technology to bring in Orko into the movie.
No, I don't think that was the case at at all.
That'd be hilarious if that was.
No,
I know.
obviously not. I mean, that's one of the reasons why is because they brought in a new character. So very similar to the 87 version in which, I mean, the reason why they did that was because they couldn't animate Orko at the time. And so they brought in Gwildor. This time around, we have a robot character named Roboto, who originally started off as like a servbot and then was programmed into being like the maid and cleaning up everything. And then finally, Man of Arms decides to make her into a action bot again and to fight off against Skeletor and all of his men.
Yeah, and I mean, Roboto was like, one of the characters from He-Man. So I mean, like, but that Roboto came from like, another planet. He didn't like come from like, he wasn't just like, Josh. So this is another, again, this is another rewrite of a character.
Yes, it is.
I guess for this case would be necessary, but I think some people will probably kind of look at it and like, oh, hang on a second, this is like that robot from Star Wars. Like, well, imagine this people would say that, like, because I think, wasn't there like again, you'll have to forgive me, everybody. I stopped watching Star Wars after the eighth movie. Was it the eighth movie? I think it was.
What was it? Last Jedi?
The Last Jedi. I think it was. And so, in regards to where everything's happened after that, I've not seen the Mandalorian or anything like that.
You haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, have you?
No.
Okay, so
there was another. Wasn't there another one? Like it was like the Crew or something like that.
Rogue One.
Not Rogue One. No, it was the other one. Like,
Solo.
It wasn't Solo. Again, how many of these have there been? Like,
There's been a lot.
There's been too much. So but I'm sure there was like one where there was a robot character. I can't remember what the series is called, but I think the people were pointing out that saying, "Oh, hey, it's that giant robot character that they're bringing that person in from Star Wars."
Okay then.
Yeah. Okay. So
so Roboto does basically take place of the Orko character, where she's alongside with the crew and helping them out. And there's like there's a bit of banter between Man of Arms and Roboto, very similar to how it was with Man of Arms and Orko, where Orko would mess up with his powers, and Man of Arms was always angry that Orko couldn't control it. Where we have here in which like, stop, you're not gonna assassinate me if I put you back in your original state, are you? And she's like, oh, I make no promises. So yeah, you could definitely see that there was a little bit of a little callback,
from there. And so the other person we haven't failed to mention actually during all this is that dare I say, Alison Brie's portrayal as Evil Lynn in this movie. I mean, like, she isn't too far away from, the cartoon version of Evil Lynn in all of this. Like, she knows who she is in this, and I think she probably took some inspiration, I think, from the cartoon character, I believe. And also, like, it was interesting because, you were seeing how she was, like, trying to get, onto Skeletor's good side. And it was kind of like, hey, are you doing the cloak and dagger here? Like, at the end of the movie, it was going to be like, Skeletor's going to, like, try and do his evil plan. But then, Evil Lynn decides to, like, do some, like, use her magic to, like, defeat Skeletor in some way. And, like, assume to be, like, the next, ruler of Eternia. That would have been interesting, actually. If she pulled a Starscream, how cool would that be?
That would have been interesting,
yeah. Like, it would have caught the audience out by surprise if they did it. Like, so Skeletor is like, okay, I'm about to become, the ruler of Eternia, and it's like, if that's, when he was holding the sword up and, like, it wasn't working, I thought maybe, like, is this going to be the case where, Evil Lynn comes, like, and whacks him in the back, and, like, she pulls up the sword, and it's like, I've got the power now. Like, that would have been a good switch, bait and switch, if they did that.
I mean, in the show, we've seen several times how Evil Lynn was so fed up with Skeletor's power and his ability to kind of manipulate people into saying that I'm the ruler, and she several times wanted to be the one to take over Snake Mountain. So I would have been surprised if that would have happened.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was expecting that to happen, but no, they didn't do it. She just once again, like in the last Masters of the Universe movie, she just slinks away, and like maybe we'll see her in the next movie, pending that actually happens or not.
Yeah.
So I think this isn't the last time I think we've seen Alison Brie as Evil Lynn. I think in this cut. Maybe it might be the case. Maybe she just slinks away and never appears again.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, we remember the last time they tried to do an interesting twist on Evil Lynn where maybe she might appear in the next one, but it just never happened.
Yeah, exactly. So. And so in regards to the rest of our cast, I mean, like, here's the thing about this, is that apparently the names of all our characters were made up by Adam because he's 10. And so those names that all the characters have aren't actually their actual names.
No, they're not their
actual names. And if we ask her what their actual names are, we don't know.
No, we don't know. So Fisto, Ram Man, Mechalek, even He-Man was all made up by Prince Adam when he was 10 years old, and he would like draw them all over his room with like various crayon drawings.
I think the writers knew that, I think if they said, oh, well, these are their names, I think it would be kind of silly.
Yeah.
I think they were basically poking fun at that, and I think they were trying to get a bit of a laugh out of that as well, but I mean, like, it was just kind of like, no, I don't think it connected with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of like,
oh, these names sound really stupid. It's like nobody would take this seriously.
Well, I mean, like, it's He-Man, of course. I mean, this is the thing. This is another part of the confusion of the movie. Like, are you making this epically, silly, or are you making this epically gritty? Like, what direction are we going here, guys? Because it kind of sounds like there was probably a section of the crew who wanted to make a gritty He-Man movie, and there was another group who kind of wanted to make this is like it's like a Marvel movie, and there was another group who kind of like was just reminiscing about the old cartoon show. That's what was happening. Like when they were when they were writing the movie in the production studio, like one bunch of people like just sat in front of the TV watching the old He-Man cartoon, and another bunch of people like watching Marvel movies, and the other guys are trying to stop them from like pull them away from like the Netflix, pull them away from Disney Plus and the YouTube, and say, come on guys, we need to get this movie written, come on, get on with it. It's like, yeah, it kind of feels like it does feel like that when you're watching it, like you can just see all that going on. But again, that's just my interpretation of it.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, like, I'm just making fun.
All right, but yeah, I mean, I'm actually, I mean, they were able to give a call back the fact that Queen Marlena is originally from planet Earth when she tells the sorceress, send Adam over to my home planet, which is a callback to the fact that, yes, Queen Marlena was an astronaut who was traveling around in space, and then all of a sudden, a meteor crashed on it, and then she crashed into planet Eternia, trying to fix it. She meets up with Prince Randor at the time and falls in love with him, and then she decides to stay in Eternia and become the queen with
that's what happened in the cartoon.
Yes.
Whether that's what happened in this movie, we do not know.
I mean, the only thing that kind of hints on it is the fact that when Adam was escaping with the sword, and then you have her telling the sorceress, send Adam to my home, which was planet Earth.
Well, yeah, we know she's from Earth, but we don't actually know how she ended up there in the first. Well, she could have fallen into a black hole, into a dimensional doorway. She kind of fell.
I feel like
the same way that where Adam himself went over to Earth. So
yeah,
we don't know for sure.
Yeah, I feel like, that little line right there is for the fans. Anybody else would have been like, wait, what? Wait, what? She's from Earth? How did she get there? Like, I mean, unless you're a fan of the show, you wouldn't have no idea.
That might be explained in the second movie. We don't know.
Maybe.
We'll find out soon enough.
Anyway, but yeah, so Adam ends up in Oklahoma, and we don't know what the rest of the backstory is. We don't know if he was raised by different sets of parents. We don't know if he was brought up in an orphanage.
I thought they were going to go like the Superman route with this. Like, where he ends up in Oklahoma, like, where he ends, he's outside a farm, like, these two,
well, I mean, he was from Kansas, Superman. So
yeah, he was, and so like I thought they were going to do this with like Oklahoma, like he's just like oh hey, this couple just found him, and like oh hey, it's this kid, we need to look after him, and there's nothing really seen about his backstory.
No, not. I mean, the only time in which we see a slightly older Adam explaining to his classmates about like, who's your favorite historical hero, and he draws a picture of Ram Man, and everybody laughs at him. And, it just shows throughout his entire life, he's trying to explain, I'm a kid who is a prince from another planet, and my parents were captured by a guy with a skull for a head, and there's...
Which I think is a really lousy thing, because it's kind of like, if they did it where, he fell out of the sky, and, this couple found him, and, like, she's like, oh, wow, we just saw you fell out of the sky, what happened? And it's like, then he tells the story, and, like, where maybe they are a little bit dismissive at first, but then, like, how on earth did they fall out of the sky, and, like, all this other stuff. And maybe he has proof of, like, that he comes from other stuff, and so maybe they accept that, and they they pass him off as their own, but so they say as a warning, this couple or whatever, listen, I know you want to get back to your home world, but you need to lay low, because everyone will think you're crazy if you do it. But obviously Adam didn't have those characters in this movie, so obviously he went off and tried to do whatever he could do.
Yeah, so he was...
It's almost Truman Show like, in a way, like
I mean, yeah, he was trying to hide the sword away from Skeletor, but while he was in the hole trying to get into planet Earth, he accidentally loses the sword. And so he spends the next 15 years trying to find the sword. And meanwhile, he's talking to everybody around him and they all think he's crazy. It's like, oh, who's this weird guy who claims that he's from another planet and he's a prince? And the world that he's from is filled with dragons and mystical forests and stuff like that. And his parents were captured by a guy with a skull for a head who has magical powers. Everybody thinks he's crazy. And then the fact that he's obsessed with swords because he's trying to find the sword where he can be able to have the power of Grayskull. And yeah, I mean, everybody thinks he's just obsessed with swords, including his supervisor who tells him that you're obsessed with swords and it's taken away from your work that you're supposed to do.
Yeah, actually, I'm just reading along here. Actually, I do apologize, everybody. Is that apparently this movie went through very long development. This was actually first pitched to as a Sony project in 2009.
Well, actually, it dates all the way back to 2007 because John Woo was originally supposed to work on this film, and then it languished.
Yeah.
And then John Chu was supposed to work on this film, and then it languished. And then there were several other directors that they were throwing back and forth.
Well, apparently the Nee brothers and Nicholas was they were supposed to be directing in this movie, and then eventually Travis Knight was the one who basically took on the project.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Travis Knight is the founder of Laika Films, and actually one of the co-writers of this film is Chris Butler, who worked on a lot of Laika films. So yeah, there's a lot of Laika influences in Masters of the Universe, which is not too surprising because, as you know,
really, I don't know about you, but I didn't really see them all that much, really. Like for me, it's just like if anything, we were making fun of more of it being like Diet Marvel, really. Than anything else.
I was referring to the last live action project that I know that they worked on, which was Bumblebee, the Transformers movie that was focusing on Bumblebee. And even though that it was one of the least successful Transformers movies that came out, it was actually the most praise, apparently, from a lot of people who said that it definitely captures the spirit of what the Transformers was, as opposed to Michael Bay.
Well, what is it that's like, is such a repellent to that, something that's developed by, someone related to Laika, and all of a sudden it just doesn't do anything at the box office? Why is everyone so, are they too abstract for the main audience?
I guess so, because, as we've seen in the past, for those who've tuned into last year's old Spook Lane Creepy Chats where we talked about Coraline and Paranorman, but sadly Coraline is the best, highest grossing film that Laika has ever done. Everything else afterwards, they've either been decent in the box office or they've been box office bombs. There has been no case in which they've actually done like billions of dollars in the box office. It's really sad to see.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we've, I think, now this has gone over to nearly 45 minutes, I think, I think we stretched this out as much as we could.
There's a lot of things that I really do want to talk about. I guess there are some other characters that I want to briefly mention about, like how, Teela is supposed to be the one who is the strong, the strong backbone of the group, where Man of Arms is completely fallen apart. And so she sees Adam of, who he became 15 years later, and he's still pretty much the same coward that she remembered when he was a kid. And so in a way she's going to be the one to try to toughen him up and trying to be the one to save Eternia, because Eternia is pretty much in disarray ever since Skeletor take over. And yeah, I would say that Teela matches pretty well with what she was in the cartoon, in which she's pretty tough and she's a great fighter and she has this banter with Adam. And yeah, unlike in the TV show, she actually does know that Adam is He-Man.
Yeah, but mind you, that was the joke they did at the very end of the movie. Is like everyone seems to know that Adam is He-Man, but he's under the impression that nobody knows that he actually is, and yeah, it's
like, oh come on, Cringer, we have to do this thing right now.
Imagine that. Imagine if the cartoon show still went along and Adam starts confess to everybody, okay guys, I'm He-Man, and everyone kind of turns around and says, yeah, we knew all along. we just we didn't want to say anything, I always wanted okay, this is Adam's private time, so we just wanted to play along. So, yeah, we knew that was your identity.
Yeah.
It's like when just make jokes about the fact hey, you still have the same hair. It's yeah. So the one thing I'll say about our chemistry between our characters. Like, I don't know, it just it felt a bit unusual, like doing like the feeling segments between like Man at Arms and He-Man in those, and Adam, I guess you could say. And I mean, it looks like they tried to do something with Skeletor and Evil Lyn in this, but I mean, like, I don't know, like, it would have been interesting to see if Evil Lyn was trying to like manipulate Skeletor in a way, but he wasn't having any of it, in that.
No, he was much more crueler and unforgiving, and yeah, Evil Lyn kind of like seemed a little bit more grovelly and very hand and foot with Skeletor, where she would have like a little bit of a balance of both, where she was very schemy, but at the same time she was following Skeletor's orders because she knew that he was way more powerful than her.
Yeah, but like then I thought maybe there would have been a case of that. I thought that's what we're building up to. Like, Evil Lyn is like she's trying to like get on Skeletor's good side, and like she's putting up all the abuse and everything like that, and then eventually boom, like she would topple Skeletor, and then she would basically be the bad guy that we'd all have to worry about.
Right.
Like again, the bait and switch that we talked about earlier in the podcast.
Sure.
I was hoping that was going to happen, like because I thought, wow, that'd be such a cool thing to happen, but it didn't. So there we are.
Also, the fact that we actually do have Cringer in this movie, like he is legit in this movie, whereas in the previous movie he's not.
No, we see him at the beginning, and then we see him towards like in the final act, like so we see him towards like when they do the plan, and like so if anything, like his he probably is only in the movie for like probably like maybe like 5 minutes.
Sure,
if
but
anything.
I mean
he's not in for a very long time.
No, he's not, but it's better than zero in the 1987 version.
Yeah, like it would be cool if like he was in there, like he was just I want to be quite avoidant of all this, and I don't want to be involved in that, and then he just inadvertently like like in the cartoon show, he inadvertently ends up getting turned into Battle Cat.
Yeah,
and then he has to like oh wow, okay, then well I guess I'm this now. So I feel braver all of a sudden. Again, there was just so that was again. I think Cringer unfortunately was a bit of a missed opportunity as well. Like the fact that he only turned up for like certain parts in the movie when he could have really like he's supposed to be He-Man's psychic in all of this.
Yeah.
Like he's introduced in the intro of the cartoon show. I'm surprised he didn't get a bigger presence.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah, well, mind you, Orca should have got a bigger presence in this anyway as well, but obviously he was only kind of just shoved in like the first like the last 30 seconds of the movie pretty much. So
yeah, I mean, they do have a lot of callbacks to previous characters who are in the film, but yeah, I mean, other than the ones that we talked about in the movie, they're not really that much of a focus, to be quite honest. So I'm trying to think about anything else that I want to talk about. I mean, I do like the set pieces that they were able to build into the film and making it feel like it is a reminiscent of the cartoon, where you get to see all of Eternia, where you get to see all of the characters interacting, you get to hear the music, which is very 80s inspired, which is a very nice touch. And yeah, I mean, you do have moments in which it definitely does feel like the cartoon, and it's trying to do its own thing, and at the same time, I feel like it's trying to capture what the Marvel movies of recent years is trying to do, where it's trying to bring in a little bit of silliness, a lot of serious moments, and it's trying to be tongue-in-cheek, it's trying to be campy, but at the same time, it's trying to be really brutal, and it's trying to be really, really gritty.
Yeah, like guys, what are you trying to do? Like it just that's what I kind of came away with. Like, it just felt like, oh wow, I just like I feel like my emotions have kind of like been pulled in like left, right, and center.
Yeah, I mean,
again like even when talking about this now, I really don't know how to fully feel about He-Man, Masters of the Universe, 2026.
I mean, at least I knew what they were trying to do. It's kind of like it seems like there's a.
I didn't.
Okay, well, fair enough. I knew what they were trying to do. They were trying to like bring Masters of the Universe to a new audience who had never seen it, because I mean, let's be honest, I mean, unless you have seen the recent Netflix series, kids are not going to know about Masters of the Universe. I mean, this is a project.
We were actually, your kids were actually in this movie, by the way. The way, it's 12A, so like it's, here in the UK, it's like you can, if you're under 12 years old, if you're accompanied by an adult, then you'll be fine to watch this movie. And some kids actually did turn up to watch this movie, but I mean, I could hear some of them talking from time to time, like when I was watching the movie. I don't think they were engaged with it at all, and I'm not surprised about that, to be honest with you, because it's not their era.
No, it's not. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a franchise that that is over 40 years old. And yeah, these
Guess they're
kids.
going to find a babysitter at this time of day.
I mean,
guess.
to be quite honest, I think it was just a parent who clearly grew up with the original series and wanted to introduce it to their kids. It's very similar to when we went to go see the Thunderbird 60th anniversary special, and you had a whole bunch of people in their 60s and even into their 40s bringing in their kids to watch it for the
I have to
first
say,
time.
when we were in the theater, there was a lot of guy friends there. Let's just say that, like, a lot of people on a guy friend date. I think.
Oh yeah, there were two guys.
No, there was two guys like virtually like in every row. Like there was just like all these guys who were just coming over to watch He-Man.
Yeah,
Like,
they were there carrying their pizzas and their nachos and their drinks, and they were just like talking, and they were like looking forward to the movie. I mean, it was just
there wasn't very many. I mean, there wasn't very many women there, were there?
The only woman that I did see was maybe one woman who was alongside with some of the guys, and the woman who was bringing her kids to watch the movie.
Yeah.
Other than that, no.
To be fair, we did go see an afternoon showing. Like, and by the way, here in there's no holiday here in the UK right now. Like when we watch this movie, so maybe all the people are at work. Maybe later on this evening, maybe we'll probably see more people. We didn't get a chance to actually see because we had some others. Obviously we had to do this podcast, so we didn't get a chance to see the later editions, see who came in and out of the theater.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the only ones that we did see was the father and son that we talked about earlier, and
exactly
that was it.
Yeah, that was it. And I mean, I think I really am sort of coming to a conclusion.
Well, no, hold on. There's one thing that we need to talk about,
which is what?
The end credits.
Oh well, I mean, like, there's two things: the Orko, message for for the episode, movie, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get that now if we're gonna do more Masters of the Universe movies? Or are we gonna get messages at the end of it all?
Yeah. It's like you need it's like heroes don't need muscle so they can be good. They need to be empathetic and kind. And if you have a skull for a head, most likely you're a bad guy.
Wow, that's a pretty terrible message. Like, here's the thing about this is that the one thing I will say about for that message, if that's what we're going to reflect on, He-Man did give Skeletor an out in all this, saying like, look, I want to talk over this with you. I don't fight because I want to. I fight because I have to.
Yeah, and you might be thinking, oh, that is so Steven Universe. It's like, oh, is he gonna sit down and talk to the gems about like, don't conquer the world and make everybody miserable? Let's just sit down and talk about
it. Steven Universe wasn't the first to do this.
No, it wasn't.
There's been other heroes who saying, look, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, and as the villains always do, they always choose the hard way.
Yeah,
and then they get their asses kicked.
That's true.
That's the end of the movie and roll credits.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like any hero that you can think of, even like the Marvel and DC heroes, especially Superman, where it's like, or Batman, it's like, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. If we do it the hard way, you're not going to get away with it easily.
I mean, for all the bad Adam Sandler movies that are out there, even Little Nicky even did this. He said, get in the flask, and he just got his ass kicked, and then, he had to basically do something in order to get them back in the flask. So, even the worst movies that, have this sort of thing going even do this thing.
Anyway, but yeah, the one thing that I did wanted to mention regarding about the post-credit scene, other than the whole Orko thing, was that conversation that Queen Marlena had with Man of Arms, where she said, I'm happy that Adam's home, but I'm hoping that we find her. And you know what that means. Yeah, because...
She-Ra.
Yes, that's right. Because we actually do get a scene in which we get to see She-Ra. And yeah... There's an end credit where they're hinting that if the movie does well in the box office, She-Ra is going to be the focus in this one.
Well, I've not had a chance to look at... I'll just safely say this. It's going to have to do more than $200 million at the moment, because around $170 to $200 million is what's been projected to, for the movie to basically cost when all of this is all said and done.
Yeah.
So, if it does more than that, or if it, does, I don't know what their aim is going to be, but I think I'll just safely say this. I think if they only make $100 million back, I don't think that movie is going to happen. I mean, I might be wrong, or maybe it might just go straight to streaming. We'll see.
I mean, it was an Amazon produced film, so I wouldn't be surprised if this film does not do very well. Then most likely it will go to streaming, or it'll never happen at all.
Or maybe all the actors probably won't come back for it because they are to piss in bottles. But
Anyway, but yeah, we remember the last time in which that.
I'm surprised you didn't get that reference.
Anyway. God. Anyway, but yes, we remember the last time that Masters of the Universe had a post-credit scene. You remember in the 1987 film in which we do get to see Skeletor saying, "I'll be back." He never does. So, will history repeat itself?
Well, let's rate the movie and let's see for ourselves.
Okay, then.
So, I mean, like, it's very rare that actually we would do rate, Crystal Skull movies, but I mean, we're now changing the theme anyway, so we might as well just do it.
I mean, we do it anyway.
Rules are there to be broken.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the thing about this is that, so this movie feels quite messy, it feels convoluted, and also, like, it doesn't know whether it's doing, Marvel Light, whether it's doing a whole new He-Man story, whether it's doing an existing He-Man story with a cartoon show, or it's like, bringing in cameos from the 1987 movie. I don't think this movie knows who it wants to be, and it's having a bit of an identity crisis. It's going from, bit from bit. The one thing also I'll say about it is that, I know there's, like, pacing issues that you can also come up with a story, but I think there's pacing issues actually going on with the scenes, because, Skeletor, bursts into one scene where, Adam's about to go through the portal, and the sorcerer basically says, oh, go through the portal, and, like, Skeletor kind of standing there with his staff saying, okay, is this bit ready? It kind of feels more like a theatrical, it kind of feels like a stage play more than it does feel like a movie sometimes, because obviously you need the actor on the stage to, like, provide, the dialogue in order to, like, carry on, what's going on there, and the whoever's on the stage having to kind of stand there to allow it all play out, and then after that, then they do the next scene. It kind of feels a bit like that, so it kind of feels like more like watching a play more than it is kind of like watching a movie sometimes when you're going through some of these things. So I mean, I think it struggles from like structuring issues. I think in that regard, the music, by the way, on a positive note, is actually really badass. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the soundtrack being released. Actually, I want to listen to Brian May, like do his version of He-Man. That's good. I tell you what, I will be very surprised that ends up being kind of like that's what Masters of the Universe or He-Man kind of gets related to. The fact that Brian May's rendition of the He-Man theme. I think that's going to become the most popular theme. I think compared to like the original theme. But anyway, we'll find that out soon enough. But that's some of the positives. I like the design of Eternia. I like some of the designs that they came up with for the characters, and I like the way that some of the characters have, still retained, some of their characteristics, from other renditions of He-Man. But, some of the rewrites of characters, like I said about Man-at-Arms before, and some of the other ones, I didn't really like all that much. And in the way that I think that they did the whole Adam to, He-Man transition, I thought, in my opinion, could have been done a lot better. Also, Skeletor could have been written a lot better too. And unfortunately, Jared Leto, played, more like played the basic Skeletor more than trying to like put his own impression onto the character or try to like lift the character up. But I think maybe he could be restricted from from the way they wrote the character and the way he was directed. I don't know. So, unfortunately, I think, for me, I'm going to go 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I think
I'll probably say the same thing for the same reasons that you said.
Yeah.
I mean, you could definitely tell in the last scene of the movie in which when Roboto, when she was destroyed by Trapjaw and then she gets rebuilt again, you could definitely tell that they were heavily, they knew, they were very well aware of the memes because, then, Trapjaw's, after he was blown up and then Man-at-Arms talks to Roboto and then he gets repaired again, you get to see her parts are more revealing and then she's like, this is very revealing, like, and then everybody just like backs their head and starts laughing.
Because that's what they do in the cartoon. Like,
yeah. And of course you have that meme of, He-Man where, he's just like,
yeah. But they could do all of that, but they couldn't get Skeletor's arms like shaking in the air, kind of like, curse you, He-Man!
Yeah, they didn't do that, sadly.
Yeah. They should have done that.
Well, I mean, again, that would have probably been out of place for this film because, I mean, they made Skeletor a lot more of a serious character. But...
which I hate. I don't think that's... No, actually, I disagree with you on that. Like, they got him to do really devilish things, don't get me wrong. Like, he did some really hateful things in the movie, which kind of, like, was a bit of a turn-off for me. But, I mean, like, there were times where, like, he was, like, making fun of his villains, like, calling them blockheads and idiots and things like that. Like, and then, when he's done with, like, his monologue, like, they're all still just standing there. It's like, go on, do what I told you to do. Like, some of those things were quite funny.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, he could have raised his arms and said, like, ah!
Exactly, yeah, like, but again, Dr. Evil did it first, and, Cruella de Vil also kind of, like, did some of the things that he was doing, through that, too. Like, I feel like there was nothing new that Jared Leto added to Skeletor, which is really sad, really, and so I can't really say that his portrayal was all that great. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that at the end of the day, if you're interested in going to see this movie, then I would recommend that you do. I mean, what was the rating that you gave the 87 version? I think you said it was a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, like, I mean, it was, like, so actually, that's one positive, I guess I'll say. They didn't do Masters of the Universe 1987. They learned their lessons.
Yeah.
I think you can definitely say. So, I mean, I would say, if you had to watch the 1987 version or the 2026 version, by God all means, watch the 2026 version, because you're going to get a far more better ride out of this, even if you do feel a bit tired of, like, the Marvel sort of, like, game plan of, like, how they do movies.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe in the next 40 years, if they ever try to do another He-Man movie, maybe they'll bump it up to an 8 out of 10.
Who knows? Like, but anyway, 40 years is way. We'll be 80 by the time that movie comes out. Good grief.
Anyway, but hopefully we get to see the Masters of the Universe sequel, where hopefully we get to see a development of She-Ra, because She-Ra has never been in a live-action movie. So I would love to see She-Ra represented.
Well, until then, for In Search of the Crystal Skull, my name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
Take care and bye-bye for now.
See you later.